area of finances. So Shah Abdul Latif has depicted the bitter situation of those who were the owners and herders of livestock, and they uh, reared it for not only domestic consumption, but they had been involved in business activity, and they made ghee from it, and they sell it to the shopkeeper, and they will take their goods in return. So that bet is Keru Karindi Rees Ayal Sangaransi. Keru Karindi Rees Ayal Sangaransi, who would compete with those pastoral folk, who would compete with those pastoral Sikh. Jini ji Khamis Vaniam Varai Chadiu, whose Thursday settlement has been taken away by the shopkeeper. Here, Rees is not the jealousy, Rees is competition. It carries the sense of comparison, rivalry, or trying to equal someone. Sanghar refers to the pastoral community, while Vanu evokes the village merchant who operates through credit, supplies provision, and subsequently comes to recover what is owned. Linguistic analysis of this breath. Care Karindi Rees. Care is opening term and opening keyword that it means it is a rhetorically very powerful word. It is not simply asking for an individual answer. It establishes the incomparability of the people being described. Means the people are incomparable. None can compete them in that sense. The rhetorical question produces an emphatic meaning: who would possibly rival them? Who would possibly rival them? There is also an interesting tension between apparent dignity of the pastoral people and their economic vulnerability revealed later on in the Beth Ayal. Ayal is an intimate vocative expression, approximately "O mother." However, Ayal is not real mother, and the mother that takes care of any child or any teenage can address to a graceful lady of the old age, Ayal. So, O mother, or dear one, it brings the utterances into emotional register of folk speech. This is important. Stylistically, Shah Abdul Latif Bhitai does not describe an economic system in abstract terminology of economy. He embodies economic reality in domestic, oral, emotionally charged language. Sangharan. Keru Karindi Rees Ayal Sangharan. Sanghar is associated with pastoral people, particularly a community whose economic life is closely connected with livestock and dairy production. Here, there are two terms are in use. One is Sanghar and other is Sangi. Sanghar are those people who are stationary and rear and train their livestock stationarily at their fields or farmhouses or range lands. And Sangi are those people who take their livestock to other places when there is a drought in their own region. So Sangi are immigrant Sanghar, immigrant livestock owners and herders, and Sanghar are stationary livestock owners and herders. The plural form Sangharan gives the Beth a collective rather than individual dimension. The subject is not one indebted person, but a whole pastoral economy. Jini ji Khamis, Keru Karindi Rees, Ayal Sangaran se, Jini ji Khamis. This is economically most significant phrase. Khamis, as it is a very typical term in the days of past, because all of the settlements were done on the day of Thursday, because people have produced ghee from butter on that day, and they uh, did settlements on that day for their some uh, articles of shop. So Thursday is commercial transaction or settlement associated with ghee. It is a crucial term. Thus, rather than interpreting Khamis simply as ordinarily weekday Thursday, the term can be understood with local economic practice encoded in the words. The expression Jinindi Khamis therefore points towards their regular economic settlement, their dairy or ghee transaction, the circulation of household income, and ultimately the point at which the merchant's claim becomes due and he returns back by taking that ghee and giving them payment and settling their debt credit. Vanu Varayasaryo. Vanu is the merchant or shopkeeper, particularly the person who is supplying goods through the village credit economy. Varan literally conveys the idea of turning back, returning, or bringing something back. But in the economic context, it requires the sense of calling in, recovering the outstanding amount. Hence, Vanu Varayasadu can be understood as the shopkeeper has come to recover his due. This is remarkably compressed expression of credit relationship. Economic analysis of this faith. The Beth provides a small but revealing window into rural economy of historical Sindh. At its surface, the verse appears to describe pastoral people. Beneath that surface, however, it contains an entire economic cycle, and that cycle starts with livestock, then the milk, then ghee, then market transaction, then merchant credit, and then debt recovery. This is one of the most significant dimension of the Beth, a pastoral production. The Sanghar community represents an economy based substantially upon livestock. Animals are not merely possessions, they are productive assets. They provide milk, ghee, butter, meat, hides, transport, and reproductive wealth. Consequently, livestock functions simultaneously as capital, as food security, and as income generating property. Livestock has three roles: role of capital, it is an asset, and role for food security and income generating property. Ghee as an economic commodity. It was in the past days. The ghee was a major productive commodity in third in rural areas of Indus even. So ghee is not merely food. In traditional agrarian economy, it can become a marketable surplus. The transformation is milk, butter, ghee, commodity, then exchange value. It was those days when there were no market economy or free or cash economy. It was the days when there was a barter economy system in rural areas of Thar. Ghee therefore represents the moment at which pastoral production enters uh, enters the monetary or exchange economy. It was an exchange commodity. The pastoral household produces a natural resource, converts it into a durable commodity, and exchanges it within local economic systems. So these were three phases. First phase, rearing the livestock, and then making ghee from butter, and then utilizing it as an exchange commodity. The merchant as a credit institution. The Vanyu is much more than a shopkeeper. In a village economy, the merchant often performs several functions simultaneously: supplier of things; creditor, intermediary; purchaser, debt collector. A household may obtain essential commodities from the merchant before it has cash available. It was not the days of cash economy, it was the days of barter economy. The relationship consequently becomes goods now and payments later. Taking now, taking in present, and paying in future. The merchant effectively supplies informal credit. When the due date arrives, the merchant or Vayam Varaya recovers the outstanding claim. Thus, the Beth captures an important feature of a pre-modern rural economy. Credit can connect production and consumption, but it can also create dependency. The paradox of pastoral wealth. This is perhaps the most fascinating economic contradiction in the Beth. The pastoral people possess productive wealth. They uh, were owners of livestock, yet they may simultaneously experience financial vulnerability because they were lacking cash. They have animals, they have milk, they produce ghee and then productive capacity, but also consumption, credit, debt, and merchant recovery. In modern economic terminology, we might describe this as a distinction between wealth in productive assets and liquid purchasing power. There were no liquidity, so people uh, had done in that way. A household may own substantial livestock but still lack sufficient cash or immediately exchangeable goods to meet its obligations. Shalatif captures his contradictions without using economic theory because Shah Abdul Latif was versifying for people, for the masses, for common people of sin, for not only technical people or an oligarchy. Informal debt economy. The Beth also suggests a system in which economic ships are based on trust, reputation, recurring transactions, and customary settlements rather than formal banking. There were no formal banking in those days. It was only trust by the people to the merchants and merchants to the people. The merchant knows pastoral household, the household knows the merchant. Goods circulate on credit. Payment is linked to the seasonal and periodic availability of dairy products. This is an example of what economic historians would call an embedded economy. It was embedded economy. Economic activity embedded in social relationship. So its major base was on social relationship and trust. Philosophical analysis of this Beth. The philosophical depth of the Beth comes from a contrast between human dignity and economic dependence. Who can rival them? The first line celebrates the pastoral people, the care karindi rees. Who can rival them? Who can compete with them? Who could rival them? So they possess a certain freedom, abundance, vitality, and dignity associated with pastoral life. But immediately afterwards, Shah Abdul Latif introduced the merchant, Vanyum Varayachari. The economic world enters the pastoral world. It was the other step of that economy. This creates philosophical tension, freedom versus economic obligation. The pastoral person appears free in nature but becomes bound by debt. Wealth is not the same as freedom. One of the deeper philosophical implications is possessing wealth does not necessarily mean possessing freedom. The pastoral household may possess cattle and dairy wealth, yet the merchant's claim can limit its autonomy. This distinction remains philosophically relevant today. A person can possess property, a person can possess assets, a person can possess livestock, a person can possess land, and nevertheless be economically constrained by debt. Shah Abdul Latif therefore anticipates a profound question of political economy. When does wealth become genuine freedom? When does wealth become genuine freedom? And when does it merely sustain an obligation? So that is a pertinent question to the present day economy even. The cycle of desire and obligation. The Beth also read through self Sufi philosophical idea of attachment. Human beings require material good. Exchange is necessary. But one consumption becomes dependent upon credit, desire, and generate obligation. The sequence becomes in this way that need, acquisition, debt, obligation, and recovery. This resembles a broader Sufi understanding of worldly attachment. Material possession can appear liberating while simultaneously creating new bonds. Nature and economy. The pastoral economy is intimately connected with nature. The livestock depend upon grass, they depend upon water, depend upon seasonal rainfall, depend upon grazing land, and depend upon ecological cycles. Thus, the economic system represented in the Beth ultimately rests upon an ecological foundation. If pasture fails, livestock decline, milk declines, ghee declines, income declines, debt becomes harder to repay. Therefore, beneath the apparently simple story of a merchant collecting dues lies a profound relationship between environment to the production, to the livelihood, to exchange and debt. This is particularly significant in the ecological world of Thar, where water scarcity and climatic uncertainty can directly affect pastoral wealth. Merchant pastoral relationship. The Beth can conceptualize as a miniature model of rural political economy. Actor and economic role. Sanghar is an actor and its role is pastoral producer. Mal is productive capital. Kheer Makhan is primary dairy production. Ghee is marketable surplus commodity. Vanyu is merchant and creditor. Khamis is periodic commercial settlement or transaction. Vapas Vara and recovery of outstanding dues. The important point is that production and debt coexist. The pastoralist produces commodity while the merchant controls an important part of its circulation and credit relationship. That is the part of different economic theories even today. Shah Latif's economic vision was very much clear and pro people. Shah Abdul Latif should not be treated as an economist in the modern technical sense, yet his poetry contains what may be called an implicit ethnographic economics. He observes pastoral production, he observes livestock wealth, he observes dairy processing, he observes local markets, he observes merchants, he observes credit, he observes debt, and he looks at seasonal vulnerability and also on household survival. What makes him exceptional is that he transforms these ordinary economic activities into poetic philosophy. The merchant collecting a debt is not simply an economic event, it becomes an image of human dependence, human relationship, human trust, and human creditability. The pastoralist appears wealthy because of livestock, yet the arrival of merchant reveals another reality. Economic freedom is fragile. Freedom is fragile and economic freedom is dependent. A three-layer interpretation of this myth can therefore be uh, done in this way as literal level. A pastoral community is involved in a regular dairy or ghee transaction, and the merchant arrives to recover what is owed. Socioeconomic level of this myth will be very good, great. The words depicts the interaction between pastoral production and the village credit economy. Philosophical level of this myth exposes the paradox that material wealth can coexist with dependence, and that human freedom is threatened when economic relationship become relationship of obligation. A strong uh, interpretive thesis of this myth will be uh, this myth transforms an apparently ordinary episode of pastoral commerce into a profound commentary on rural political economy. The Sanghar represents productive pastoral wealth rooted in livestock and dairy production, while the Vanyu represents the credit bearing merchant who links village consumption with the market, but also introduces indebtedness and economic dependence. Through the culturally specific institution signified by term Khamis, Jininji Khamis, Shalatif captures the transition from pastoral production to commercial exchange and ultimately the tension between material wealth and economic freedom. In one sentence, we can describe this way that it is simultaneously a linguistic document, linguistic flower, and economic ethnography, and a philosophical reflection on paradox of wealth, debt, and freedom. He was Shah Abdul Latif Bhai, who has rightly said that Ter Karindiris, Ayal Sangaran se, Jini di Khamis, Vani Varai Chadiyo. Thank you very much for watching me on this channel, and I would like to request you to share your feedback on these reflections by me on in this bit of Surda. Thank you.